Hey, I'm Ofa YouTube videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things. We're in just about the last week before the election here in the United States, and I've been making videos about various abortion ballot measures, among other things. First, I spent a weekend learning as much as I could about as many as even exist, and then I circled back to follow up on Florida. And then today, now, I am talking about Missouri again. I talked about Missouri, of course, in that first long video, but I think the pushback against question 3 is fascinating and horrifying, and I would really like to talk about it a little bit more. I'm always going to end up touching on subjects that I already got to in that first abortion video in these follow-ups. I mentioned in that first one that Missouri was one of many states that got saddled with a trigger ban following the fall of Roe v. Wade in 2022. Their trigger ban was already written in 2019 before it was enforceable, but it was pretty much already being enforced in just about any way that it could be. Missouri is one of many states that took a more regulatory sort of approach to banning abortion before it could enforce its heartbeat bill. These regulations are referred to as trap laws. A trap law is a targeted regulation against abortion providers. They regulate abortion providers in a way that other medical professionals are simply not being regulated, ways that go far beyond typical standards of patient care type things. Abortion providers are regulated down to the size of the buildings that they operate in. Things like mandating that doctors live in the same county that they serve in, which just feels like a safety hazard to me. Like, abortion doctors do get murdered. That is very much a thing. And there's also just no reason to kind of stipulate that thing unless you're explicitly just hoping to make it as difficult as possible. Somebody should be able to drive in and commute to work if they would like to work somewhere that they don't want to live. Regarding these trap laws and the legislative restrictions on abortion, I'm going to read to you from The Last Clinics Standing, which is an article by the ACLU from before the most recent Roe decision, but during the time when we knew the writing was on the wall and that was going to happen. In 1992, Missouri had 12 abortion facilities. By 2014, it had 2 abortion facilities and 1 clinic. Last year, it had 1 clinic, until a federal district court enjoined its trap law, which allowed a second clinic to offer abortion services again. But now it has gone back down to 1 after a federal appeals court let 2 measures, virtually identical to the one struck down in Texas, take effect in September. Beyond its trap laws, Missouri requires state-directed counseling designed to discourage abortion that must be provided by the same doctor who will perform the abortion. Following the counseling, a woman needs to wait 72 hours before she can obtain the procedure. Because the counseling must be provided in person, she must make 2 separate trips to the clinic. And with so few clinics in Missouri, a trip to the clinic could be 300 miles away. That, in turn, requires additional time off of work and possibly extra childcare costs, given that the majority of women who have abortions are already mothers. The state of abortion access in Missouri is extremely grim. Even when and if this ballot measure passes, abortion will not be easily accessible in the state, at least not procedure abortion. All of these ballot measures, for that matter, are only the beginning of fights that will need to be continued to be fought by local reproductive rights organizations and healthcare providers in each of these areas. But the ballot measures themselves are still very important parts of the fight. And you can tell how important a piece of the fight it is because of how hard the opposition is working against it, which is a lot of what I want to talk about today. I'm not making a case for abortion to you. I don't feel like I need to do that. You chose to watch this video. I made a very similar joke in the other one that I made that was like this about Florida. Like, you clicked on a feminist lesbian's, third video about abortion. You knew what you were getting into. So rather than trying to convince you that a thing I'm pretty sure you already think is fine, I want to talk instead about a very deceptive campaign that is being run in opposition to this abortion bill. I went over the question in full in my abortion ballot video, but all you really need to know for right now, before we get further into it, is that it protects abortion until fetal viability. That's it. That's what the question asks. It asks if you would like to protect abortion until fetal viability. People are lying and saying that it includes things that it does not include about healthcare for transgender people, and that is just not true. Like, there's no reason other than transphobia, paranoia, and maybe the inclusion of gender neutral phrasing on the ballot for the patient. And I'm talking about an entire pushback campaign based entirely on the concept that this whole bill is actually secretly about trans rights and trans care. I'm talking entire billboards put up to further that lie. And that already would make me angry enough because, like, it is not part of the ballot question and they're just being transphobic for no reason. But also, trans care for children is already very much not allowed in Missouri. So they're claiming that question 3 would undermine that and also undermine parental rights, also known as they are just throwing shit at the wall that they know riles their base up and hoping that they'll take the bait and vote for it. They're doing the same thing with this whole thing about, oh, make sure you vote so that only citizens can vote, and also ranked choice voting is illegal. You can't do ranked choice voting ever in the future. And it's like, only citizens already can vote, which I already think is kind of stupid. Like, I think if you live here, you should get to vote, but I know that's a very radical take, apparently. The last thing that I am concerned about, and I am concerned about a lot of things in this election, the last thing I am concerned about is people who are not citizens voting. But, like, that's already illegal. But Missouri, among other states, has a measure that is, like, make it specifically illegal for people who aren't citizens to vote. And it's like, there's no reason for that other than xenophobia. But anyway, this anti-trans push from the ballot question is picking up national attention. Though I heard about it first from friends, from a good friend of mine who lives in the area first, and then also from Nuance Corner friends. I do know for sure that there are at least a good handful of Nuance Corner residents in Missouri. Hello, I love you all dearly. But even PolitiFact did a whole article about this anti-trans push. The headline, "Would Missouri Abortion Amendment 3 legalize surgery for trans kids? It's highly unlikely, experts say." With abortion access on Missouri's November ballot, anti-abortion advocates are arguing that a proposed amendment, Amendment 3, goes beyond giving women the right to choose whether to have children. It will maintain constitutionally all reproductive health services, and that includes transgender treatments for minors, Senator Josh Hawley said at a September 7th religious conference in Ozark, Missouri. Josh Hawley is somebody who it would, theoretically possibly be possible to unseat this year. Just, I'm not trying to get anyone's hopes up. I'm pretty sure that it's deeply unlikely, but it is not fully impossible. Please go vote against Josh Hawley and against every Republican who has had any ounce of power in your state if you get to vote in Missouri, or actually anywhere. Vote against Republicans everywhere. The article continues. Vote no on Amendment 3. Billboards hammer a similar message. No tax paid transgender surgery, they say. And in an October constituent letter, Missouri's Republican Governor Mike Parson warned that the measure opens the door to allow children to get sex change operations without parents' knowledge in our state. And I barely feel a need to clarify that this is not happening. I mean, nowhere in any state in this country or any are children whose parents have actual custody of them getting gender affirmative care in any form without parental consent. Maybe if somebody got adopted and is trans, some biological parent out there is telling some version of this story with some ring to it that is somewhat truthful, but not really. This thing that Trump and company are suddenly obsessed with, where somebody's child gets magically and suddenly transed, is ridiculous and unfounded. Isn't it, Jojo? Yeah? Tell him. Jojo, you said that? Say something. Yeah. That's very nice. They're scaremongering based on something that is already, again, not legal in Missouri, and not because of a that's not happening because nobody's doing that catch like I just made, but again, because Missouri already outlawed gender affirmative care for trans children. That is already a thing there. When they outlawed procedures, they called it the fucking SAFE Act. Save adolescents from experimentation. And it makes not only just providing procedures, but also referring patients to people who could provide those services, something that doctors could be punished by a medical board for if that patient is a minor. That is not being undermined by this question about abortion. The later ruling that would outlaw regular transition for children and not even just procedures, not something that would be included in this abortion bill. The part of it where it means that insurance gets to just not pay for gender affirmative care, also not something that would be included in this abortion bill. None of that is being undermined by the question, and none of that got a question to challenge it on this ballot. Coming back to this article from PolitiFact. This dispute hinges on one's legal interpretation of the amendment's phrase, all matters relating to reproductive health care. And it comes as polling shows Amendment 3 is very popular. 52% of likely Missouri voters in August said they support its passage. Amendment 3, which endured numerous legal challenges before landing on the November 5th ballot, would constitutionally protect the right to abortion up until fetal viability, typically until around 24 weeks of pregnancy, and restore Roe-era protections. The amendment's full text includes a 53-word passage that anti-abortion activists are focusing on. The government shall not deny or infringe upon a person's fundamental right to reproductive freedom, which is the right to make and carry out decisions about all matters relating to reproductive health care, including but not limited to prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, birth control, abortion care, miscarriage care, and respectful birthing conditions. Missouri outlawed gender-affirming care for minors in August 2023. Though some of the provisions are set to expire in 2027. Missouri's law also blocks Medicaid coverage for gender-affirming care for adults. The ACLU has challenged that ban in court. The article also has some quotes from a woman named Mary Catherine Martin, who is senior counsel for a conservative lobby group that has been trying really hard to work against Amendment 3, suing to try to keep it off of the ballot. Her argument is basically that saying all matters related to reproductive health care, including but not limited to, would include anything related to reproductive organs at all, ergo it would include gender affirmative care. It's the breadth of the language that we're considering adopting, she said. It doesn't have any narrowing languages to allow judges to narrowly define reproductive health care, to exclude gender affirming care, and really anything relating to the reproductive system. And this is a lot of semantics, clearly, but it's also obviously mostly a lot of bullshit. She and Josh Hawley's office actually both pointed PolitiFact to sources that they thought backed up their claim that really didn't. Oh, Joe, do you have to do that right now? She used a definition from a U.S. Department of Health and Services federal regulation on HIPAA privacy that says reproductive health care is care, quote, that affects the health and the individual in all matters relating to the reproductive system and to its functions and processes. And the PolitiFact article, which this one was really good. I sometimes think Politico is a bit bullshit, but this article is really good because they right away clarify. But a caveat says that the definition, quote, shall not be construed to set forth a standard of care for or regulate what constitutes clinically appropriate reproductive health care, end quote. Other legal experts said they did not read Amendment 3's language as applying to gender-affirming care, and they didn't suspect a court would either, partly because they didn't know of any courts having interpreted it that way before. Missouri state law does not define reproductive health care. Major health organizations such as the CDC and the Department of Health and Human Services, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and the American Medical Association refer to reproductive health care as relating to issues of pregnancy, contraception, and abortion, not gender-affirming care. Hawley's offices pointed PolitiFact to examples it said showed organizations defining reproductive care as transgender care. Several were advocacy groups linking the fight for reproductive rights to the fight for access to gender-affirming care, but these do not constitute a legal definition of reproductive health care. Holly's office also referred to healthcare providers who offer reproductive care to transgender patients who might have unique health needs such as menstrual suppression and fertility counseling, but that does not mean that all gender-affirming care, which includes social transition, hormone treatments, and surgical interventions, are considered reproductive health care. Courts interpreting laws are using standards of reasonableness, said Kelly Gillespie, law producer and director of the Center for Health Law Studies at St. Louis University School of Law. The common sense definition of reproductive health care includes things like contraception, treatment during pregnancy, abortion, and treatment during and immediately after birth. Gillespie said, where the purpose of care is about reproduction as opposed to health care that might have an incidental effect on reproductive organs. Gillespie said it's highly unlikely Amendment 3 would change Missouri's current laws on gender-affirming care. I really believe there are no secret Trojan horses in this amendment, she said. I think the existing gender-affirming care ban induces far more harm than it sought to correct. However, I don't think the passage of Amendment 3 is going to lead to the reversing of the gender amendment care ban statute. So, okay. The panic about trans care is just baseless panic. I think it's as much that they're getting their footing from this whole misinterpretation of what reproductive care means as, again, because the amendment language is gender neutral, and I think that does sort of piss the wrong people off. You may have already noticed this about the way that I speak about abortion, though I'm not entirely consistent with it. I do tend sometimes to fall back onto woman if I'm making a specific point where that makes sense in that kind of context. But I do make an intentional effort to use gender-neutral phrasing when I speak about abortion. I don't correct or change the things I read from because, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater might be the wrong idiom to use in an abortion, but I don't have a better one. I think it's worth not throwing the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to things that are pro-abortion, that are strong, but just not as inclusive with the language as I would be. That's all to say that, and I think that this has been reasonably clear in my videos, but I love to take a chance to make it more explicit. I do think that the fight for trans rights and the fight for reproductive rights are entwined. I think everything comes down to body autonomy, and I would hate for me saying this abortion ban doesn't even overturn trans care bans to sound like I'm saying that that is a good thing about this abortion ban. I wish there was also a ballot measure that you all got to vote on to overturn those bans on trans care. Holly's office was being bullshit, and they were willfully misinterpreting something that is actually true, that the link between trans struggles and reproductive struggles is rich and strong and full of history. Trans people have always needed access to abortion, have always suffered under abortion restriction, suffered from lack of access to their hormone therapy while they're pregnant if they become pregnant while on testosterone, let alone the horrific dysphoria experience of carrying a child when you don't want one. I just want to voice that I purposefully include trans people in these conversations because they belong here, and also because I have known trans women to be consistently pro-abortion in the same unflinching way that I am. It is not just trans men and non-binary, assigned female at birth people who care about this issue. This is a place where I have felt enormous solidarity from the trans community, even when our experiences don't exactly match up. So I just want to make that point before I continue. I believe in trans rights. I am very pro-trans rights. I wish that you had a trans right measure on your ballot. I'm sorry that you don't. And I hope that people just straight up lying about this measure is not something that actually adversely affects it in a way that makes it lose. Moving on here, something I like doing when I'm researching for a video is to just go through the sources that one of my sources used and see what else I can find. PolitiFact is a great source to do that with because they aggregate so many links. One of the ones they linked to was an article from the Kansas City Star about question 3, which talks about a little added note under the question. Florida has one like this too, citing financial loss as a result of not having as many babies forcibly birthed as possible. The one from Missouri says, state government entities estimate no costs or savings, but unknown impact. Local governmental entities estimate costs of at least $51,000 annually in reduced tax revenues. Opponents estimate a potentially significant loss to state revenue. And I think this is crazy, like legitimately crazy. Thankfully, the Kansas City Star explained a bit more and I didn't have to go digging somewhere else for more answers. Why does Amendment 3 say it will cost governments money? It's impossible to predict the exact economic impacts of restoring abortion rights in Missouri, but it's up to the state to make an educated guess. and guesses varied wildly in the years leading up to Amendment 3's inclusion on the ballot. After the state called for estimates and officials went through a legal ballot, the language that appears on the final ballot comes from Greene County, which includes Springfield. Greene County estimated that 136 future citizens would be lost in that county annually due to legalizing abortion in Missouri. State Attorney General Andrew Bailey wrote, "It estimated nearly $51,000 in lost revenue annually to that county based on the reduced population base. The predicted population loss was based on the number of abortions recorded in 2020, he added. So the $51,000 figure you'll see on your ballot comes from one Missouri county's estimate of hypothetical lost tax revenue from 135 non-existent residents. But not everyone agrees that it's the right number to appear on the ballot. Some say restoring abortion rights would cost the state nothing, while opponents of the amendment have proposed estimates in the billions of dollars. Potential taxpayers! Potential taxpayers! That is fucking delusional. Holy shit. I don't even know what to say about that. I didn't even script beyond just all caps potential taxpayers because I cannot even explain to you how my brain cannot comprehend that that would be something that would factor into whether or not somebody can have access to medical care. We're in hell. So clearly we are moving out of the anti-trans pushback against the bill. What are some other ways that people are pushing back against it? There is another claim, one just as untrue as the one about gender affirmative care, but very punchy for lawn signs, I guess, that to oppose question 3 is to be in support of victims of human trafficking. Some people claim that Amendment 3 would remove a requirement for medical providers to report suspected sex trafficking, shielding traffickers from culpability. Missouri already does not require mandated reporters, including healthcare providers, to report suspected instances of human or sex trafficking unless the victim is a minor or a vulnerable adult, meaning a senior or a person with disabilities. The text of Amendment 3 doesn't preclude healthcare workers from immediately reporting suspected trafficking of minors. It merely prevents them from delaying or restricting their patients' abortion care without a good reason. The other sign I have seen, sent to me by my friend, and enough to make me just so fucking furious, is a sign that doesn't make quite such an explicit claim, other than the fact that what it's saying that your vote would do is a lie. I mean, these votes say that voting yes is to protect girls, women, and babies. I am very often struck by the paternalism of anti-abortion messaging, the way that it paints people who need abortion as irresponsible, or misguided, or somebody who needs protection from making a choice that they may later grieve. And these signs in particular really drive that home to me, because it doesn't even feel like it's making an attempt to speak to women. Does it, Jojo? Yeah. It feels, as was pointed out to me by the friend who sent a picture of one of these signs to me, like it's the Republican Party knowing and admitting that they just aren't even going to bother trying with the women. And with an increase in rhetoric about going back to a time before women's suffrage at all, I find being cut out of the conversation when it comes to voting a distressing thing to think about. A lot of money has gotten dumped into opposing question 3. This would be an amendment to the state's constitution, which means if it was approved, it would be a lot harder to revoke. And as I already said, it will only be the beginning of the fight to reinstate abortion care in Missouri. Clinics will need to be reopened, and before that can even happen, lawsuits will need to be filed and fought and won. I spoke a bit about somebody's story of needing and being unable to access abortion in Florida under one of these bans in my follow-up video about that ballot. And I want to talk about another story in Missouri in this video. This is from the Missouri Independent, and it's not a story of somebody's abortion specifically, but just a brief story about how much harder healthcare is made even on the doctor's side of things. When a sonographer approaches Dr. Jennifer Smith, a St. Louis OBGYN, her heart drops. Every time I look at a fetal ultrasound, it takes on new intensity and new anxiety, she said, concerned that her patient will have a diagnosis they can't be of help with in Missouri. Missouri physicians are balancing medically complex pregnant patients with legal restrictions that could land them in prison for up to 15 years if they perform an abortion that the state finds was unnecessary and therefore illegal. No providers have been prosecuted at this point, but the ways something could go wrong keep Smith up at night. So too does the future of not only maternal health care, but also motherhood in Missouri. Missouri women are afraid to be pregnant in Missouri, Smith said. They are so worried that they might die while pregnant, or that they might get pregnant with a baby with anomalies and have no options because they live in Missouri. The article goes over a lot of what I spoke about in this video, about the lack of access to abortion in Missouri, and it does that by speaking about the clinics that end up serving a lot of patients from Missouri. Clinics in places like Kansas and Indiana, which are now overwhelmed with more and more patients as more people have to travel to access health care. It can take weeks to get in for a procedure abortion, and you also need an appointment to get a medicine abortion. It's not as easy to just order pills as it is in some states. Like, here's something that's incredibly unfair. I could go on GoPuff right now and order a morning after pill. I checked while I was scripting this video, and there are 4 different brands that I could choose from, all somewhere around like $40 or $50 before delivery fee and tax and tip and everything, which could be prohibitively expensive for many people, myself included, especially if it were the wrong time of the month and I needed one, God fucking forbid. And I would also need to do some research because if I were seriously considering taking one, I feel like it's worth saying in case other people are not aware of this, I know that there's a weight limit, and I also know people are aware of this because they've seen me. I know that I am not on the side of that where it wouldn't be a concern for me, and that's as much as I'm going to talk about my body on my YouTube channel. My point anyway, though, is that everyone should be able to do this everywhere. It should be equally legal and easy for people in Missouri. It even said no ID is needed to purchase when I clicked in to check. I thought maybe it would work like buying alcohol does on these delivery apps, but nope. You could just have it if you're in the right state. And if you're in the wrong state, like Missouri, and by wrong I mean luck-wise for abortion, not judgment-wise, then you're in a state where medication abortion is illegal, and where before they could make it illegal, you had to have an appointment and be in the presence of a doctor when you took your first pill, after getting a pelvic exam and having your ultrasound and biased counseling to try to talk you into keeping the baby. Before I remind you to vote and sign off, I want to read more of that article from the Missouri Independent, from right after what I read you before. While Smith is often helping women who want to be pregnant, a couple miles across the river in Illinois sits the regional logistics centers for Planned Parenthood of the St. Louis region and the Southwest Missouri. There, 3 patient navigators help those trying to end their pregnancies. Kenesha Page, the call center manager, said she saw a tremendous increase in callers from the West Palm Beach area, more than 1,100 miles south, when Florida's abortion ban went into place on May 1st. Right now, she says the clinic receives about 100 calls per day. They act as pseudo-travel planners and financial aid counselors, helping book transportation and finding funds for patients. Despite the comparative proximity, transportation can still be a headache for some Missourians, particularly those in rural areas of the state without access to public transportation like Greyhound buses or Amtrak, Page said. Sometimes when the patient doesn't have a vehicle nor access to public transportation or car rental services, their next best option is to rent a U-Haul to drive to their appointment. But more often, Page said, she hears from Missourians trying to find and afford childcare, or from minors who need a legal guardian to give consent for financial assistance. Some days, Page will find herself breaking the news to Missouri callers that abortion is illegal within their state borders, and that they will likely have to take a multi-day trip to Illinois to get care. Page recently spoke to a woman who was homeless and living in a hotel with her children. She had no child care options, nor a place to stay after the procedure. Page's team helped connect the woman with funders, who assisted with the daycare fees and helped make sure she had a safe place to recover overnight in Illinois. Their work is done when they get the final call or text from a patient saying they've returned home safely. It gives you that extra energy or extra push, determination to continue doing what you do, Page said, because it is definitely making a difference. Abortion clinics and access groups like this do and continue to do such crucial work, and that work could be made easier by lightening the strain that is being put on these individual clinics with them being so flooded by patients from these other states with bans. Medication abortion should not need to happen in person in a clinic unless there's reason to believe that a patient should be observed. And much of the strain could be taken off of clinics in other states if Missouri would just make hospitals provide a very routine procedure. Frankly, I think abortion could and should be able to just be done out of an urgent care, especially the medication ones. So I really don't get this one. But I did just want to give a shout out in the world that we live in and with the issue of access that so many people currently have to deal with. These groups are doing so much more to protect girls, women, and children in these states with abortion bans than any of the bans themselves ever have. So please, if you are in Missouri, vote yes on 3. If you are in any other state with an option to vote on abortion rights, please do. Check carefully in Nebraska because you've got a good bill and a bad bill, and we're definitely going to follow up once the results are in for these states. I'm probably going to do one video going over all of them like I did for the first one. If you have extra money to donate, consider donating it to organizations doing the kind of work Paige and people like her do. If you find yourself in a position ever of needing to travel for an abortion because of a ban like this and being unable to afford it, please reach out for help to these organizations that were built for this. If you're unable to access medication abortion in your state, there are also organizations that help with that. I have assembled some links in the description below in case that's helpful for anyone at any point now or in the future. Though I'm very aware that all of these electoral videos I'm making are both extremely niche and also not exactly what people in the content creation game call evergreen content. Like, if it's 2025 and you're watching this, it's probably not because this particular video became relevant again, but because you just like my videos and are watching all of them, in which case, hi, thanks. And also, thanks to everybody who watches my videos and likes me right now. I have lots of other videos on the back burner. I have lots of other videos on the back burner until my election anxiety subsides, so we will be back to more regular topics soon. But I appreciate you letting me jump around like this because it's really the only way that YouTube is going to remain sustainable for me long term, to be able to talk about what I'm most interested in as I'm most interested in it. And an extra thank you to my lovely Patreon supporters, some of who you can see the names of on the screen right now. You can also support me on Patreon if you are interested in a couple of extra videos from me a month, or just another way to toss some support my way. So honestly, even just watching the videos all the way to the end, especially when I'm off on tangents like this, is a huge support. Thank you. I'm up late working on this one, so I was going to say have a good night, but I think doing the math, I'm probably going to upload this on Sunday? Because I already have a video ready, but I didn't want to upload it in the middle of the night and on the same day as my Massachusetts one. So, yeah, I think I'm going to upload this on Sunday, which I think means that I will have voted by the next time that I record, and probably by the time I upload this. Like I said, it's extremely late right now. I'm talking like 5:30 in the morning late. But yeah, I'm gonna speak it into existence. By the time you see this, I will have voted. Please vote. Please vote to protect abortion rights. Please do not let Donald Trump get into the White House again. I really think this might be the last time that he's even alive for a full election cycle, and if he loses this time, he'll blame J.D. Vance and Elon Musk, and it'll potentially really damage their political ambitions in the future, because Elon's definitely up to some shady shit. It feels increasingly unethical to remain on Twitter, but I have a lot of friends there now. Are we anywhere other than on Twitter? I have downloaded Blue Sky, but I haven't committed, and I always forget Instagram exists for weeks at a time. But that is not the point of this video. So, okay. Yes on 3. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Sorry this was 3 videos in a row that are only particularly interesting if you live in one specific state, but, you know, we only have elections every so often here. This is only going to probably happen every 4 years or so. Maybe I'm going to talk in the midterms. I'm going to talk about the midterms too. So still though, that's like 2 years. I'm going to be back soon. Thanks for watching.